We're switching over to the NFC West now. Let's start off with the San Francisco 49ers. Win total is set at 11.5. They're minus 215 to win the NFC West, plus 625 to win their Super Bowl, all courtesy of Bally Bet. Almost everything went right for the 49ers last season, but didn't get that Super Bowl championship. The Chiefs overcame them in overtime. Are they the favorite to win the AFC, and is it justified to say so?
I think it's justified, but I personally couldn't bet them at plus 250 to win the NFC just because everything
Mhm.
went right for them last year in terms of health, which they really needed because they had a lot of questions about their offensive line after Trent Williams. And when Trent Williams missed time, the 49ers offensive line kind of fell apart. They also don't have the same D line and secondary depth that they used to. They used to be able to rotate players at pass rusher and be really good. And then that's just not the case anymore with the 49ers, just because they have so many talented players that they have to pay. Uh, There's a lot of, I think there's a lot of or pessimism actually about San Francisco right now going in the season, but I think there was also pessimism last year because no one knew how Brock Purdy would recover after the injury he had. There's still stars on this team. I'm a huge Kyle Shanahan fan, but turmoil in camp surrounding Brandon Ayuk and the injury to Christian McCaffrey, I think has some people off the 49ers and looking to take shots on some other NFC West teams. I'm not quite there. I know there's been money at the under at 11.5 on the 49ers, and they also have the worst net rest advantage in the season where they catch a lot of teams who are coming off their bye. So maybe that plays a pretty big factor, especially if the 49ers don't have the same pretty lucky, not lucky health, but relatively good health that they had last season. So I still think they're a team that could win the NFC, could definitely win the Super
Okay.
Bowl, but I do feel like maybe they missed their chance last year at winning the Super Bowl, and that was kind of their best chance to do it, especially with a few teams in the NFC who are surging or expected to be better.
Yeah. Speaking of one of those teams, the Los Angeles Rams, their win total is set at 8.5. They're plus 350 to win the NFC West, plus 2,800 to win the Super Bowl, all courtesy of Bally Bet. The Rams were expected to take a pretty big step back last season, but a second half resurgence got them into the playoffs, and they almost beat the Lions in Matthew Stafford's return to Detroit. What do you make of the Rams, especially after Aaron Donald's retirement?
Yeah, I could see this season going either way for the Rams. There's kind of the best case scenario where Stafford stays healthy and they have another playoff caliber season, make a run. But he hasn't been the most healthy quarterback in his career. I know he's willing to play hurt, but if he has kind of any health issues where he misses time or is playing banged up and not fully effective, that could be an issue for the Rams because their roster is so top heavy because of all the draft picks that they've traded throughout the time they've pretty much been in LA, where they just haven't had many first round picks. I think they made their first round pick in like 8 years last year with Jared Verse, the pass rusher from Florida State. But defensively, if you look at that side of the ball, you lose Raheem Morris to the Falcons, who's the defensive coordinator. The big loss was obviously the retirement of Aaron Donald, which wasn't totally unexpected, but he was still pretty young and a very effective player. So that's a big deal. But the betting market doesn't seem to make it like it's a huge deal because the Rams have been being bet up on their over 8.5, where that was more even juice, and now it's juiced out a little bit. So there is support for the Rams this summer, at least at 8.5. I'm just kind of curious how they do in week one, where they go back to Detroit, the place where their season ended, a game they probably should have won. And I'm sure Sean McVay wishes he had some of his in-game decisions back to give their offense a chance to actually win the game or kick a long field goal, if you remember how that game played out. So it's a wide range of outcomes for me on the Rams, so I'm not going to bet anything involving LA, but definitely interested to see how they do in week one at Detroit as a 3.5 point underdog on that Sunday night.
All right, let's take it up to the Pacific Northwest and talk about the Seattle Seahawks. Their win total is set at 7.5. They're plus 800 to win the NFC West, and they're plus 7,000 to win the Super Bowl, all courtesy of Bally Bet. The Seahawks overhauled their coaching staff with Pete Carroll out and Mike McDonald in. How do you view the coaching change for the Seahawks, and what is their season looking like?
So this might be an unpopular take. I know I've said it to some people, and they don't like it, but I don't think Pete Carroll was that good of a coach. I thought the game passed him by.
Okay.
He wanted to run the ball so much. He wasn't a good in-game coach in terms of decisions. He was really saved by Russell Wilson kind of after that Legion of Boom defense retired, and Wilson was carrying that team to playoff appearances. So I think with Mike McDonald coming in, it's a huge upgrade. This is a guy who coordinated the best defense in the league last year with Baltimore. He's a forward-thinking young coach, only 37 years old, learned under John Harbaugh of the Ravens, spent one season kind of on loan at Michigan in 2021 with Jim Harbaugh, and he took that defense to the college football playoff. And I like the staff he's bringing in, specifically Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator of Washington last season. So he stays in Seattle from the college ranks to the NFL. And last year, if you look at Washington's offense, they were very prolific. They had a great quarterback in Michael Penix. They had three good wide receivers, and now he goes to an offense in Seattle who has three good wide receivers who they drafted in the past, and Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and most recently the 2023 first round pick Jackson Smith and Jigba. So all those guys complement each other well with their skill sets. So kind of excited to see what this offense looks like, a pass first offense, and not Pete Carroll just chewing his gum asking the offensive coordinators to run the ball to protect his underachieving defense. So I like this offense. I like the defense. I think it's going to be better with McDonald pulling the strings. They invested a lot in their secondary over the last few years. So I think that could be a really good unit. And if they can figure out the pass rush, which I would trust McDonald to do, I think it could be a really well-rounded team. I will say my concern with Seattle is just what's keeping me going over 7.5 wins. It's just some uncertainty about Geno Smith, who was obviously really good 2 years ago in 2022, but not as good last year. So I'm wondering if 2022 is kind of an outlier for Smith, and I'm just kind of uncertain of what we're going to see going forward. They did trade for Sam Howell, so that's kind of a solid insurance plan, but at the same time, I'm not sure what he is. So just because of the questions at quarterback, I'm going to stay off Seattle, but it's more of a team I'm bullish on than bearish on. And if they can get some consistent quarterback play in a new offense that I do believe in under Ryan Grubb, maybe Geno Smith can take this team to 9-10 wins and back to the postseason. So interested to see what Seattle does. I'm kind of looking forward to what they look like without Pete Carroll, who I felt like maybe at times was
Yep,
holding the team back a bit.
for sure. All right, let's wrap it up in Phoenix and talk about the Arizona Cardinals. Their win total is set at 6.5. They're plus 1,300 to win the NFC West, 100 to 1 odds to win the Super Bowl, all courtesy of Bally Bet. Arizona looks to be a team on the rise with Kyler Murray returning healthy for Week 1, a new wide receiver 1 in Marvin Harrison Jr., and a promising young coach in Jonathan Gannon entering his second season. Are you buying the Cardinals this year?
So yeah, I do want to buy Arizona. However, there are two things that are going to hold me back. First is the schedule. If you look at the early season schedule, first 10 games, it's Bills, Rams, Lions, Commanders, which is a little bit of more of a softer spot. But then after that, 49ers, Packers, Chargers, Dolphins, Bears, and Jets. So it's all teams kind of expected to, if not make the playoffs, at least contend for the playoffs. So they get really no break in terms of their schedule. And the second part is just the defense. It's not a talented unit. I know Gannon is a defensive mind, so maybe he can get the most out of some of the players on that side of the ball. But I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do it in year two. I think it might take even another year to figure it out. If you are interested in betting on Arizona and in terms of just a game to game standpoint, I would look at taking their overs because, as you mentioned, some of those pieces on offense are exciting with Kyler Murray back. You have Trey McBride at tight end, and now Marvin Harrison Jr. on the outside. And Murray did show some promise when he returned from his ACL tear from 2 years ago. He came back late last year, and I thought he actually looked pretty good in a new offense run by Drew Petzing, it's a little more structured offense than what kind of Cliff Kingsbury was running. So maybe it's a good fit for Kyler Murray, and it certainly looked like it. And bettors are on Arizona. This over 6.5 has been bet throughout the summer. I just worried about them in terms of their defense and that schedule where maybe they're not going to win games, but I think there could be opportunities to bet on them in the underdog
Mhm.
role, which Kyler Murray has thrived in the past.
All right, and a lot of people would probably make the case that this is a cakewalk for the 49ers to win. Who do you think's going to win the NFC West? Because I can see almost any team winning.
Yeah, I mean, you could really make the case for all three teams behind the 49ers. I mentioned the Rams, if like they get their best scenario with Stafford staying healthy and Kupp and Nakua, and then their defense kind of takes a step forward with some of their young guys. You have the Seahawks, who I kind of outlined why I like their coaching staff so much and some of the pieces that they've drafted recently. And then the Cardinals, they could be a fun team. I like Jonathan Gannon. Kyler
Yep.
Murray has a lot of upside, but I will say the 49ers will win this division. I just think there's too much talent there. And even if there is
Okay.
injuries, Kyle Shanahan can scheme up enough on offense to get them just to at least win regular season games. So I'm going to go with the 49ers, but you can definitely make a case for all three teams as a dark horse candidate to represent this division in the
Definitely.
NFC playoffs.